This project is slightly different to my other flower projects. It's a different technique, but you can use the other flower tutorial and create that different style of flower if you want. But this one is simple and fun to make. You can see you can bead the center, you can make a leaf on the plant stick, or you can create a wire center. So I'm going to show you the wire center. It's up to you. Now I'm using aluminium wire. This is a thick gauge, 1.6 mil, but you can use any gauge wire. I mean, I'm using this thickness because I want a chunky flower, something quite large. And you need to wrap it around a mandrel. I've just got my bead jar here with lots of beads in, but just wrap it around any cylindrical shape. And this obviously will determine how big the flower petals and the flower is going to end up. So I'm just using these bead little pots to wrap around. You could use a rolling pin, anything. But if you want something smaller, use thinner wire and wrap around something smaller. Now you need at least 6 complete circles, 6 to 8, but 6 because it's such chunky wire. So roughly create this coil, an even size coil, and now cut it from the spool, leaving at least 6 to 8 inch stem. Bring it all together, so bring all those circles closely compacted together and just take a little bit of the short end and use that to bind all those circles together at one point. Now don't bind and bind and bind, because this is such a chunky gauge that just 1 or 2 binds will do, because you don't want it to be too sort of bulky at that end. So now you've got all those circles, take the tips of your chain nose pliers and just off center, hold them down on your mat and twist. And you can see that creates that little kink in the wire, that little twisted kink. Now bend the stem and then slowly ease out and fan each of those petals. They will distort a tiny bit because you're pulling them around from that center point, but as long as you do it slowly and gently, you will get a sort of roundish petal flower shape. So as I say, this works with any wire, any scale. It's a really easy, good beginner's technique. Now I'm just going to hammer the very, very ends of those petals to work harden, and also to just give a little bit of extra sort of interest and shape to my flower. So just go around just those little ends, and you can move the petals around if you can't reach them. Just it's quite pliable at this stage and very moldable. So hammer on a steel block with your whammer hammer with the steel end, and just get those ends to be nice and flat, but you don't have to do the whole petal, just the outer edges. So now you've got a much firmer piece, and you can readjust it again to get that shape. So this is your base of the flower, and after the base we want to make another layer because that's a little bit open. I mean, you can stop there, but I like to make one more layer. Now I'm going to use a thinner gauge and a smaller mandrel, so I've just got this little jar here. In fact, this is probably bigger than I want it to be, but doesn't matter, just any slightly smaller shape. So they want to go, because they're going to go inside. So I'm using, this is 0.8 gauge. So this time, because it's a thinner gauge, I'm going to create a few more circles. So this coil has got at least 8. So 8 to 10 for the second inner layer of petals. And then again, cut it off, leaving a tail, good 6 to 8 inches, and use that shortcut end, do exactly what you did last time to wrap. And this time I can wrap a couple of times because it's much thinner wire and it won't cause such a bulky sort of bit at that end. So it'll be in the middle, really, that bulky bit. So same thing again, bring your stem, long stem wire out, project it down, place it on your mat and just twist and make a lovely little sort of indent to create that petal shape. And again, fan out all those separate petals and bring them around into a circular shape to create the second layer of the flower. Now you can see how soft this wire is, so it does misshape a bit and distort a little bit. As long as you hold it with your hands and make sure it looks okay. I mean, it's going to sit on top of that first layer, so you're not going to see these individual shapes so much. It won't matter, and the center will be disguised with your centerpiece anyway. So just don't worry too much about perfection, because it's the overall look of it that's going to work. Now the same thing, we want to hammer those outer edges because we want to work hard on it and make sure it's going to stand up to wear and tear. And it also gives, I think, a nice look to the round wire and then a bit of flattened wire. It just gives it, I don't know, more interest and a bit more solidity as well. So go around each petal, and of course you can put more kinks in these petals. I've just done one. I have actually in the past done quite a few kinks on the tops of the petals to make it look more like a carnation. And it does work. So you can experiment with this. It's not, in stone. It's just to give you an idea of this technique and then make it your own. So I'm just going to go around and fan out all these separate edges so I can get to them, so that they're all flattened, and you just sort of like spread the wire out. Of course, you could do this in a completely different colored wire, but be careful when you're flattening or hammering colored wire that you don't take off the coating. It's better then, to be very careful as you hammer it. So these two layers, as I said, they could be in completely different colored wires. They can, because even the aluminium wire comes in lots of different colors. So don't feel you're restricted to silver. I just happen to love silver. So now I'm sewing on that extra layer with that end. So I've gone through and back and through and back, and I've come back around just to keep it, make sure that it's completely connected to the base that you made. So just go backwards and forth a little bit, and then end up with that projecting wire at the front, in the center of your flower. And then you can create a spiral, so a little circle, and then whirl that around to create a spiral that will sit right at the center of the flower that you've just created. So this little spiral that's going to be sitting at the center, it means you can glue a cabochon stone on that. It gives you something to glue onto, or you can bead. I'm just flattening it just to get it more compacted at the center, so it's not too bulky. So you can choose what you want to do with the centerpiece. Now, as I said, you could just glue on a cabochon, but I'm going to make a pom-pom wire bead. So if you have a coiling gizmo, place your coiling gizmo on your table and make some, this is 0.5 millimeter colored wires. So I'm just coiling a length of this yellow colored wire, and it can be anything from 0.4, 5, 6, anything like that, just to create some color. So I'm not going to bead in, I'm going to make this wire bead. So there's my yellow coil. It's just over an inch in length, and I've prepared two other coils with two different colors. So I've got orange, and I've got the bright pink, and I've got the yellow, because I'm going to layer these together as well. Now stretch that coil out, but don't get rid of the curly whirliness, and then just get the end and make a circle, and then with that circle hold it and bring the wire around to create a sort of circular shape with that curly wire, and then hold that round shape and wrap, just like you would sort of a ball of string, wrap that curly wire around and keep moving it around to create a sort of hook. It'll hook itself onto itself. So just keep going round and round and round squeezing it with your hand, and then when you get to the very end, just push that into the middle of your sort of ball of wire to where the sun don't shine, as they say, and just make sure that it's nice and compact and that it's a circular shape like a ball. So that's the nucleus of the piece, and now I'm going to just add another color to give it a bit more depth. I want to add a bit of pink, so again just push the end into that curly whirly ball and then just push it around. It will go and again hook into those sort of recesses of the ball where the curly wire is. So just go round and round and round and round, just keep spinning it round, holding it with your fingers nice and tight, and then push the end of the wire into the center to get rid of it. Make sure it's hidden. So that adds a sort of a little bit more depth of color, two-tone color. And then I'm just going to finish off with this yellow third layer. But of course you can just do it with one color. It really is up to you. I just like layering colors up because it's the center of the flower, and it'll be the most visible thing that will draw your eye because the flower is just silver. But of course if you'd made a colored wire flower, you might want this centerpiece just to be one color. So again, just experiment and do whatever you feel is right for you. So there we have a sort of three-layered pom-pom bead, as I call it, and just make sure it's nice and round. Just compact it all nicely together, squeeze it so that there's no bits protruding, sticking out, and that's ready now to put into the center of your flower. And the way we do that is we're going to use some 0.4 binding wire. So this is silver plated copper, so it's the same color as the flower base really, and I'm going to attach that initially to one side of this pom-pom. So I'm just going to feed it in and sort of sew it on so that it's connected to that, you know, part of the base of the pom-pom, because I'm going to then use that to connect onto the center of the flower. But I want to make sure it's nice and connected onto that. So now we have it secure. We can place it, each side of these wires can be placed around the side of the center, and then you'll use those long ends to sew it and connect it and secure it to the center of the flower. So again, there's no, you know, real technique to this at all. It's just until you feel it's connected, you know, you'll bring the wire back from the front and back to the back, and then back through the pom-pom bead and so forth, and just until you feel that it's firmly you know, adjusted and centered, and spend your time doing that until you feel it's really well connected. And you can always, you know, like a button, you can always wind, if you have masses of wire, you can always wind it round. So there I have it connected, and you can see I could sort of stop there, but I've decided to add one more coil around the edge just to give it a bit more colour. So this is another coloured coil I made on the gizmo, and I'm going to connect that somehow to the back. So that long end, I'm just going to whirl it round where the stem comes out from to connect it to the back of the flower. So just make sure it's secure, and then bring that curly wire just around the edge of the pom-pom bead, and that just gives it a sort of little nest to sit in, and it's sort of like a finishing touch really. So you could do this with silver if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be the colour, and just whirl it around a few times. You want about, I use about an inch of the curled wire, so it's just a little touch to make it look like it's sitting in something, and it's not just, and you don't see the edge of the pom-pom that way as well. All these things are just little finishing touches, they don't have to be done. And then again, secure it right at the back and make sure it's well secured, there's no spiky ends. So you're almost there now. So there we have it fixed, and if it needs readjusting again, just do that. There's the centerpiece. So now with that stem, we're going to attach it to a plant stick, because that can then go into a vase or into a plant. And so I'm going to create just a circle and see if that is the right diameter to feed the plant stick through. So just double check it's got to sit through, be able to feed through. Once you've established the size, put it back on your round nose pliers, and just like you'd be making an even size coil if you were making jump rings, just keep the wire on the spot, curling it under itself until you curl it right up to the flower. So just keep going, keeping that coil nice and tight and close together, and curl it right the way up to the back. So, you know, just roll it around your pliers until you get to the very center back of your flower. And there you have it. Its coil comes out from the back of the center. And that should help you feed the stick in. I mean, if you want to add glue, you can, but you shouldn't have to, because you can actually tighten the last bit of that coil. So use the tips of your chain nose pliers to grip and squeeze the very, very end of that coil, and that will hold onto the wooden stick. So just really pinch it, and then go to the top and also make sure it's not going to slip, and that it's well held, and it's not going to move around and fall down or come off. So once it feels sturdy and safe, you're done. And then the last finishing touch that I like to do is I'm using again some 0.8 20 gauge, and I'm just going to wrap that around the stem. And I find that this just, I don't know, it just adds a nice finishing touch. It doesn't look so much just like a garden stick. It gives it a little bit more of a metallic finish, and also it will help the stick stay strong because it's, you know, been wire wrapped. Cut it off just before the base. You don't want to go all the way down to the base because you're going to push it into the earth anyway, or into a vase. And then just make sure that you finish off those ends and they're completely sort of tightly wrapped around. And this is obviously going to prevent that coil from slipping down as well. So it's, you know, a good prevention for that. So now just the very end, I just like to add my signature spirals. It means that you don't have any spiky ends if you do that, but if you don't have enough wire, just basically tighten it around the end. But I'm just going to add a little signature spiral there right at the end. And these make such lovely gifts to give to people. You can give them just as they are, or plant them in a green plant for them. And there you go, a plant stick, flower stick, ready to go. And there's another one. So do have fun making these for your friends and family and for yourself. Thank you for watching.